Welcome to Let's Talk Learning Technology. Do you know the latest in learning technology? Matt and Walter do. From learning authoring tools and animation to virtual reality and everything in between, innovative learning groups Matt Kurtin and Walter Schirmacher geek out on all of it. Get their perspectives on the latest trends, tips and tricks, and recommendations so your learning tech keeps up with the times.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Learning Technology, or as we affectionately refer to it, LT Squared. I'm Walter Schirmacher, a programmer at ILG.
And I'm Matt Kurtin, ILG Senior Director of Technology and Visual Design.
Today, we're going to talk about Articulate's new artificial intelligence features across both Storyline and Rise. And joining us today is our special guest, Christina Calderwood. Tina is an ILG project manager and instructional designer, and she's been testing out Articulate's new AI features as well as many other AI tools over the last several months. Some of her testing has been just for the sake of testing to see what's possible, but other parts of the testing were on behalf of actual clients' work, to help our clients see what can be done with AI. So welcome, Tina.
Hi, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you here today, Tina. I feel like it's really important to have your instructional design background represented in this podcast because Articulate AI's features go across both the things for the instructional designer and those things for media developers really working on the interactions and the tool. It is important for us to note at this time that Innovative Learning Group uses AI tools when approved by our client, and we never rely on AI tools alone. We always use our expertise to check what the AI produces.
I think it's very important that you trust but verify. So Tina, let's start with you with some of those instructional design features. What have you found and which of these things are your favorite so far?
So they're all pretty cool, Walter, but there are different tools available in Rise and in Storyline. Starting with Rise, there's a really cool feature that it has. When you start a new project, it goes through a series of questions. It's kind of like TurboTax for training, right? So it asks you questions about who your audience is, what your topic is, whether you have objectives, and it allows you to upload content, maybe like a PowerPoint that you already had created and you're converting to be a web-based training, or even notes that you may have taken in your research or with your subject matter experts. And so you can put all that together and upload content. So it's really nice. It's conversational. It's back and forth. So you don't have to worry about, like in other tools, formatting your prompt exactly correctly because it's asking you, which is really cool. And you can create all kinds of things like an outline for the class itself. You can create quizzes or knowledge checks and even content for blocks like within Rise. It will help you do that. And that is really neat to not have to copy paste from other tools like ChatGPT or Copilot or anything like that. So it does it right in the tool.
What kind of results are you seeing when you do that? I mean, are you getting stuff you can just use right away, or do you have to do anything with it once you get the results?
Yeah, it does. It'll generate content for you. Now, this is Rise and Storylines. Rise is a little bit better and more robust about creating content for you, whereas Storyline can kind of take your content and help you edit it perfectly, not only just for grammar, but also you can change the whole tone. So it's got some pre-made tones that you can use, like professional, casual, friendly, and you can even create custom tones and you can give it, feedback of how you want it to sound. If you want it to sound very technical, you can have it do that. If you want it to sound I tried teenager just for kicks, and it came back with some cringy things that it thinks teenagers sound like. So real teenagers might not appreciate that, but the rest of us do. So it is kind of fun. One thing to note, it can edit your things from a grammar perspective. So you can say rewrite and it will rewrite. But interestingly enough, I have a Grammarly plugin in my browser, and Grammarly and Articulate don't always agree on what is the correct grammar. So definitely need a human eye to look it over and decide what you want it to look like.
It sounds like it could be a good time saver. I mean, have you tried asking it to apply a certain kind of grammar rules, like where you would add a comma at the end or not add a comma?
No, I haven't given it exact grammar advice, but there is like a little button almost that you can push that says rewrite this,
Hmm.
and it will rewrite it for you. So you don't have to worry if you're maybe typing fast and you haven't spelled things correctly or you've made mistakes. It'll definitely clean it up for you. Another thing that I really like is in Rise again, for our listeners that are very accustomed to using Rise, you know that there's different blocks of content that you create. And, there's a couple of different options. You can have like a paragraph block, or you can have an accordion or tabbed interactions. And in the past, if you wanted to change it from one to another, you'd have to create the new block and then you'd have to copy paste the text. And it was very time consuming, especially if you were doing a lot of them. Now it will, magically, quote, convert that for you, which is really cool. So let's say you had a tabbed interaction and you had like, let's say 3 or 4 different things, and there was a paragraph or 2 in each tab. And you said, I want to make it flip cards instead. It will turn that into flip cards and it will condense the information for you. So it won't like overwhelm the format that you're going into. So not only does it change the block, it also changes the content a little bit to make it fit properly, which is a really neat thing that it does.
Well, that sounds like it's a good way, because then you can see how something looks in one format and then wonder how, and kind of as I wonder how this would look as a flip card, and then try it. And if you don't like it, you can always go back to the other way.
Right. And the cool thing is it doesn't delete the block that you started with. So if you decide like, oh, no, don't like this interaction at all, you can just delete it and go back to your original, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Tina, I wanted to jump in because I remember you saying some things about what things it could convert to and which ones it couldn't. Like there were some things you were hoping that it had that it didn't.
One thing it doesn't do, if our listeners are familiar with Rise, like in certain types of interactions, you can also add pictures. So if you give it the prompt to add pictures in the AI prompt, it doesn't do it. You have to go back and edit it in the manual way, and you can add in pictures that way. And you can use the AI, which I know Walter's going to talk about in a little bit, to create the pictures, but you can't do it all in one. It's a multi-step process.
What about in converting from one block type to another? It seemed like you had to stick within the same family.
Oh, yes. So let's say you, in Rise, there's certain like groups of interactions. So like text interactions are all in one group. And if you want like a picture with text, that's a different group. So you can't use AI to flip between the different family groups. So it can't change something from a paragraph to a picture in a paragraph. It won't do that yet. Maybe they're working on it. I don't know.
Well, I mean, there's always limitations as things evolve, but I think we can see a lot of potential for where this tool is going. It is an interesting tool to see how far it's come. It sounds like you've gotten some good value out of some of these things so far. When you're trying to write your prompts, because I know that's one of the important things. There's actually a whole job now. I've heard people talk about like going into like, I'm going to be a prompt engineer, where people are going to go and learn how to write prompts for AI as actually a profession. There's an old expression in computer land called garbage in, garbage out. Pretty much comes down to if you give a computer really bad input, you can't expect anything but really bad output. But what has your experience been with like writing prompts, and how specific you need to be versus how broad you can be, and how much does it pick up on your nuances?
So in my experiments so far within the articulate tools, it's a little bit different than maybe some of the other AI tools like a ChatGPT or a Copilot that maybe some of our listeners have used before, and that a lot of the things you will do are kind of pre-programmed as options in there. So it'll have little buttons that say, create a question for me or create a summary. So you don't actually have to create the prompts, but that is certainly the case in other tools that, how you craft those prompts is really important. And the more background you can give it, the better. Yeah, in Articulate, it has a lot of kind of pre-made prompts that really help you focus in on what you really need.
Have you tried like going beyond their pre-made prompts? Can you just write in like what you want, or are you only limited to what they offer?
A little bit. In Rise, you have a little bit more functionality, I think, than in Storyline. So I'm actually looking at Storyline right now as we speak. And in their AI assistant, they have things like generate image, generate quiz, generate questions. So you don't have to actually do a prompt. So it's much more kind of push the button and it'll do it for you. So in Rise, you can do a little bit more in terms of changing the prompts.
I know we did a little experimenting with it, with actually like creating some quiz questions, and it did a good job of like summarizing the content in Storyline and then creating the quiz questions, but it didn't necessarily like apply all the formatting and things.
I've worked with the quiz generation. You can be specific about the types of things that you want it to focus on. So you can say, focus on this paragraph or on this block of information, etc. And it can do interesting things like generate questions, and it even prompts you if you want to change it to a different level of Bloom's taxonomy. So like if you wanted to make it more of a synthesis question than an understanding type of question. So that's kind of interesting that it can do that. But it is hard to revise the questions in the tool. And this gets back to something that Matt and I have talked about in regards to other things, is that there's a point of diminishing returns in terms of how many times you're going to prompt it to change something or just go ahead and change it yourself,
Yeah.
So I had an example where I had it generate a question and I didn't like one of the distractor answers. So I said, change answer C. And it reordered it, but it didn't actually change the answer. So instead of fighting with it and trying to get it to change, I just did it myself. And it was a lot faster than trying to do the prompts.
Yeah, and I like that option to be able to just pick from a list instead of having to type the prompt where it's possible to do that. And then also the option to type in more if you want to give it more specific direction. But I think it does show that with a little bit more experience working in the tools, you're going to be able to get better results than you can when you first start, because you got to try it out, try some things and figure out what works better than what.
That's for sure.
Well, a lot of good stuff there for instructional designers in terms of the content. Let's turn our attention to some of the stuff that's just for the media developers out there who aren't doing the instructional design. It seems like the main ones are image generation, text-to-speech, and sound effects.
I'd like to talk a little bit about the image generation because I played with that both in Articulate's tools and in other related tools. And I think you can do some pretty good job with giving these tools prompts and saying, I need an image of like a professional background, or I need an office setting. And it can do pretty well with that overall. Sometimes, again, like Tina's point, if you have it try to fix something, sometimes you are better off just going in and fixing it yourself, because you may get a more refined result or you may get something totally different. You never know what you might get at times. You also have to be careful about the whole trying to create images of people, because while you may get good results, you also may get some strange characters, because it just kind of depends on what kind of images it's pulling from and what it's generating. So I find I have the most luck when I stay away from things from like people, animals, or specific shapes, and just go more with the colors and just kind of a general design overall. That seems to come out better than if I try to make something very, very specific, at least with images. The sounds actually seem pretty good. I mean, I was creating some various sound effects, and it was pretty much spot on when I had it doing like fire engine sounds and bells and various button sounds. It got pretty close to what I was looking for.
I've used that too in some instructional games I've been working on. I found the sound effects helpful for the sound of dice rolling and for a reward for getting a question right, or sadness when the question is incorrect. And then for the text-to-speech stuff, I do feel like the text-to-speech in Articulate is much better than it used to be. But I think there are cases when we would still want to use third-party text-to-speech if we wanted ultimate control over the pronunciation or a wider variety of high-quality voices. So I think much better, but not ready to leave the third-party tools altogether for text-to-speech. And as somebody pointed out before, I think that could change over time as well, as there continue to be updates on a regular basis.
Can I jump in there for a second, Matt, and just say, as an instructional designer, as you're going through and you're creating content, one of the hard parts of making e-learning quizzes is making sure that you have the closed captions in there. And that used to be super time consuming. And with the new AI features, that is very fast.
Yeah, another thing that I like about that is when we need to make some adjustments to the audio, knowing that the rest of it will be produced at exactly the same speed as it was before, makes it easier to resync any animation points after we make the changes. So for that reason, I really do like using automated audio.
Oh, that's a good point.
I think it'll get better too. I mean, the one thing I find lacking is when I need to make something say something in a specific way, I like having the options to somehow craft it in a way and give it hints so that it will pronounce whatever word I'm looking for, like in a specific manner. Especially when you get to like client names or certain people's names, even, or name of certain places. It's helpful when you can, give the tool a hint and say, always pronounce this word as record versus record, for example. I haven't found a good way to do that yet in there. Does seem to pick up on the nuances of general words pretty well, but when you get to specific words that it may or may not know, I have not had a lot of luck trying to find a way to like give it a hint for how it should pronounce it. We've talked a lot about some of these tools, the pros and cons, and we've also, kind of talked about some of the features so far, but I do think we need to talk a little bit about like conclusions and kind of what we think where it is right now and maybe where it's going. So, Matt, we'll start with you. Where do you think like Articulate's rise and storyline features are going?
So I don't think that they're magic, and I don't think that they solve every problem, but I think they're solidly helpful, and I think definitely a good addition and a time saver.
Yeah, I agree with Matt. I think that it's great to get you off of that blank page, right? And it can help you do things quickly or improve things that you already have. I will say when you ask it to generate text just kind of out of the blue and not based on something that you've entered in, it's pretty generic. It's pretty high level. It's not the greatest. It's kind of Muzak, but for words, right? It definitely does better, zhuzhing up what you have or fixing things that you have rather than creating things from scratch. But I think it's great, and I'm excited to see all the new things that they keep adding.
I think I've seen some of the similar things with some of the design tools. Whereas if you just have something blank and say create a certain style, it'll create a very generic style. It might make it blue, but it won't give you any of those kind of specific kind of whiz bang features you see when you actually have like a graphic designer go in and design something. Or if I would give a person the same prompt, they probably would come back with something that I hadn't expected and been surprised. Whereas these tools, they don't really surprise you. I mean, it's a good starting point, but not necessarily. It's not going to get you the, wow, I didn't even think of that. How did you pick up on that nuance? I didn't even say it. That kind of moment I haven't seen yet with AI tools. I think that's good. I mean, I think there's a lot you can do. I don't think it's putting us out of a job. I think it's a good tool in our arsenal, and it can be really helpful for all of us. And I think as we go forward, we need to keep these things in mind with the image generation, the text to speech, and especially some of the time savers we saw, like with the conversion tools and, giving us options so we can say, hey, how would this look in this case or that case? Or if I make it into a tab or the other way. I think those options are always a good thing, and that'll just continue to get better and better and help give us more innovative solutions to help with our clients. Any closing thoughts, Matt and Tina?
Trust but verify.
We must trust but verify. Well, thank you everyone for being with us. I think we made some good points today about these tools, and I think it's important to just always think about tools as a helpful thing to help you and not necessarily the crutch you should lean on. And here at Innovative Learning Group, we always use AI tools when they're approved by our clients, and we never just rely on them alone. We always want to apply our expertise to check what the AI produces. We want to look at it, see if it's good, and then, massage it and really bring it home for what we need. So I want to thank everyone for being with us, and especially Tina for offering us all your insight into all these tools. And Matt, thank you again. You always bring such good, rational level head to all these discussions.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Walter. If you want to learn more about AI in general, we've posted a bunch of resources at the bottom of the episode's page. As always, if you have any learning technology topics you'd like us to talk about, Walter and I are on LinkedIn. You can also send us an email at marketing@innovativelg.com. Thank you for listening.